This message is for all the first ladies as well as first gentlemen of women in public office. You need to understand you could potentially be culpable with some of the most serious crimes in history if you are aiding and abetting the massive abuse of office that has commenced and has been ongoing for several decades. You do not get spousal privilege in being relieved from your criminal culpability. In the 1980s, as part of the Appropriations Bill, there was the development and the approval of something called a Youth Trust for a Drug Free America. This was right before the allegations of Iran Contra came to bear. In Nancy Reagan's biography, she discusses how she heard about what was alleged to be occurring in connection with the Iran Contra affair and what her response was. What was Nancy Reagan's response to what occurred and what was revealed about Iran Contra? Does anybody know? Nancy Reagan, as soon as her advisors told her what was going on, made a list of people in Ronald Reagan's administration that needed to be fired immediately. She went into his office in her official capacity and told him he needed to fire those people that day, that he needed to show strength and let the American people know his administration would never stand for people like that betraying America. She was very, very forthright about it. Whatever else you might want to think about the starlet that you want to see as Nancy Reagan, she understood at that moment it was sabotage and it was completely unacceptable that the people of the United States were going to be represented as allowing for a president that would have permitted something like that to occur. Now, if you're first lady and somebody tries to set up your husband or your partner or your first gentleman and somebody tries to set up your lady in a situation like that, what is your duty to the people? I'm not just talking about your reputation or what you're hoping to get out of some settlement if you can get your own ass out of there. You take on a responsibility as well. Nancy Reagan knew what to do. She did the right thing. Who decided they were going to interfere? When Ronald Reagan was shot, what did Nancy Reagan do? The first thing Nancy Reagan did is call Henry Kissinger into the office and make a very comprehensive plan of what was going to happen while Ronnie was in convalescence and what was going to happen when he got out, because she knew that they had tried to disable him and incapacitate him so that they could try to control him, because they did not approve of his leadership. They had ulterior motives, and the kind of leadership that he was demonstrating would have prevented them from getting away with them. So they knocked him out and tried to put a lien on him with secret medical billings, and she knew it. Now, did she know the specific details of how they executed it? I don't believe she knew those things, but she knew enough. She was an actual wife of the president. I don't know what you all think you are. Nancy Reagan did the right thing in both contexts. Who thought they had the authority to undermine the First Lady and instead allow for the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America to merely be some sort of staging area for people to identify precocious young people that they intended to make their prize pony for the rest of their political careers? Let me ask you, who was in political office during that time frame? It's still in political office now. Who was in political office during the time frame? The Youth Trust for a Drug Free America was not only being set up, but was in effect and is in political office now. You didn't have the right to defraud a youth trust to turn certain young people into a prize that you could lord over other people if they could extort, torture, or blackmail her into agreeing to legalize drugs so that then you could get away with defrauding the youth. That's what this is. If you can get the young people you raped when there was a congressionally approved, presidentially approved trust for young people to assist them in fighting against narco terrorism and the evils of drug abuse, if you could get away with getting that generation to cede because they become the drug dealers, then you can cover up for all the other crimes you committed against them. That was the plan. Entice them with sexy dancing and drugs of one sort or another, and give them a little slice here, and maybe get a couple of them on bail bonds enough to sabotage them and take dirty pictures of them when they're with their lovers, and then flip it out to a part of the world where people get murdered for doing things that are perfectly acceptable in their society, and then lie and say they need medical treatment because they did not agree to break the law knowingly and willingly with people who had already done horrible things, like set up cocaine parties so they could murder members of Congress. That literally happened. And if you get those young people to be so terrified and then they just agree to take the drugs, you get away with all of the manners in which you sexually exploited them as children and expected them to follow your leadership in sexually exploiting another generation of children. You did not succeed. Who did you fucking agree to support in a ministerial role? Who did you agree to be first lady or first gentleman with? Nancy Reagan was right. Apparently, Henry Kissinger was wrong. Apparently, all of the great minds of the Reagan administration thought they would tell the First Lady, don't overreact. They were wrong, and history's proven it. I'm sorry if you came after Nancy Reagan and thought that your specific version of leadership as First Lady was supposed to be the example. I think we're all just supposed to forget. We weren't supposed to know. We weren't supposed to know that after Ronald Reagan was no longer president and Nancy Reagan was no longer First Lady, that the recapitulation of what was acceptable women in leadership prevented us from having First Ladies that did things like that. That's an appropriate first response under the circumstances. Who in the administration was allowed to deny us that kind of leadership? And why did you agree to co-conspire with it all this time? Because that's exactly what you're doing. You're not just the spouse of that person in office. You both are in a position of responsibility.